My name is Ellen Duysen. I am the coordinator and outreach specialist for the Central States Center for Agricultural Safety and Health. A lot of words there. Here at UNMC, we are located in the College of Public Health. I am a research assistant professor and have been at the Med Center for about 31 years now. I started in research and moved into the world of public health about 15 years ago. So really happy to be here. I truly appreciate the invitation. Aaron?
Yeah, so I'm Aaron Yoder. I'm a associate professor with the University of Nebraska. I share two of their campuses. Excuse me, a large portion of my time is here with the Central States Center for Ag Safety and Health in our medical center and College of Public Health. I also have an appointment with biological systems engineering at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln, working with cooperative extension and being the farm or ag safety specialist with that. So we see a lot of ATV use in agriculture in rural areas. So very important topic, been working on it for a while. Grew up in Pennsylvania, had the same issues there. Went to grad school in Pennsylvania and in Indiana at Purdue, same issues there. So the ATV stuff is prevalent everywhere, and UTV stuff now even more so. So important topic we'd like to see taken care of a little bit better, and the more people we can get engaged, the better for that. So just looking forward to doing that. Looking forward to hearing from some of you about your regional challenges and things we can do to help in your region as well. We're in the central parts of the U.S., but a lot of similar things. I work sometimes with FFA and the national FFA groups, and we hear from them similar issues from across the country. So looking forward to it, and thanks for having us.
We'd love to hear who else in the audience.
Feel free to unmute and introduce yourselves. Type in the chat who you are, where you're from, that sort of thing works as well.
Hi, I'm Joseph Jarvis. I'm with NACOG, which is in northern Arizona. We cover an area about the size of Pennsylvania, and I'm here to learn a little bit more. ATVs and UTVs are not our typical focus because as for transportation planners, we're road and transit, but we have many recreators and ranchers and hunters who go throughout our region. And I myself, I think you took a picture of my four-wheeler about a couple years ago because that's something I've done before multiple times. And so I look forward to hearing some more about some solutions to help myself avoid crashing my four-wheeler again.
Very good. Monica, we'll let you and your group go.
So I'm Monica Williamson, the Principal Transportation Planner at the South Alabama Regional Planning Commission. We cover 3 counties, Mobile, Baldwin, and Escambia. Escambia County is our most rural county, and they have I would say a significant number of ATV accidents, crashes, whatever you want to call them here. And then Baldwin County, we cover Baldwin County, which has there is a lot of people who are on the ATVs and UTVs. Yes, you're in the right place.
I'm Millie Murphy.
And Millie Murphy just joined us here. So we're excited that she's here. She is with the Alabama Cooperative Extension Service. So, and also we have Anthony Johnson. Anthony, you want to say anything about yourself?
Transportation planner for SARC.
And Autumn Green. Autumn.
Transportation planner for SARC.
Millie, did you want to say anything?
I'm Millie. Better late than never.
Anyone else care to unmute and introduce themselves?
I guess I'll just give some quick context for people that are not SARPC, that are not familiar with how we sort of came to do this presentation. So right now, the NATO team is working with SARPC through a USDA grant. And through that grant, we identified ATV and UTV safety as one of the priorities. And then somehow at our transportation conference, Krishna connected with another regional planning organization who connected us with the Nebraska folks. So that's sort of how all of this was coordinated. And yeah, we're really excited to hear your presentation. Please, like they said, come off mute if you want to ask any questions, write them in the chat, and we'll try to get to them. All right. Thank you.
Wonderful. We will just jump in and get started. The way we're going to do this is I'll do the first little section, which is everybody loves statistics, right? You know, maybe not, but here in public health, we always have to, we are all about the statistics and the evaluation, it seems like, but we spend quite a bit of time looking at the statistics in our region, and our region is actually a 7 states region right in the heartland: North Dakota, South Dakota, Minnesota, Iowa, Nebraska, Kansas, and Missouri. And our center is funded by the National Institutes of Occupational Safety and Health. I'm going to guess most of you know about NIOSH. A lot of times if we're talking to some of our stakeholders, they are not familiar with NIOSH, which is the education and research arm of occupational safety and health. They do know about OSHA. And so I like to tell folks we are not OSHA, obviously. We have no regulatory ability. We are here to keep OSHA off of your property by keeping you alive and safe. There are 11 of our, well, actually 12, and I apologize. There are 12 US Ag Centers. I did not catch that on the updates. We have a new Ag Center. 12 US Ag Centers across the US that each specialize in specific things. Some of us have some commonalities. You know, for instance, we do a lot of respiratory research here because farmers and ranchers have a lot of respiratory issues. We do some hearing work and a lot of other things. We have 2 ag engineers, including Aaron, who work with us. So we do a lot of engineering as well. I work a lot with the education and the outreach side of things. So in our short time together, some of the objectives that we would love for you all to walk away with. Like I said, I'm going to be talking a little bit about the statistics and the demographics, type of injuries. And we pulled some data from Alabama so that it is more regionally focused here. I will tell you, we get the statistics or we get the data for our 7 states region on fatalities and injuries. And it didn't take us long, starting about 14 years ago, to figure out that ATVs and UTVs are a huge problem. About 50% of our incidents do involve agriculture. So you'll see, of course, that's who we are, but we are going to talk, you know, recreation. We're going to talk about uses with EMS and fire department here as well. But for us, we have a huge concern. And I will tell you, we have a lot of graduate students, and one of the things that we can put them on is recording these data into a database. And I can't keep these students on very long without them. You know, they start getting depressed. It is really a hard thing to see day after day what's happening out there, not just with the ATVs, but some of our other incidents as well. We're going to discuss some of the barriers. Why are we having trouble making inroads and getting these numbers down that are just horrifying numbers of incidents, including not just fatalities, but injuries as well, as you'll see. And then we're going to talk about some policy. And I just love digging into policy and what Alabama's doing. And we'll talk a little bit about that. And then talk about some resources that you all can draw from, and would love to talk about the resources you have and maybe share those through our website and some of our other modes as well.
Hey, Ellen, real quick. Natalie asks if the statistics are pulled from CPSC.
Yes. Yes,
Okay.
a lot of them are. Some of them we can pull. I did that specifically because we don't cover Alabama in our region. So I can't talk to you about other types of data because I don't collect data for Alabama. I only collect it for our 7 states. So we are able to talk a lot about, in our 7 states, I can talk to you a lot about incidents you would never see in other databases. You know, CPSC does not cover the injuries the way that we can cover them because we do collect news clips and things like So that we all start off on the same foot when we're talking about these vehicles, and we'll just do some quick definitions and why these are in use now and why they've become so popular. You know, they are very valuable. And when I say farm and ranch, it's also for recreation, right? But we are really focused on the use because so many of our incidents occur in agriculture. Our farmers and ranchers use them to check, go out and check their fields. They will go out and check their pivots or their sprinklers. We have a group we work with, a lot of bison herds and herd workers. They'll actually even go out and herd these bison with their ATVs. We have a phenomenal picture of ATV that has absolutely been destroyed by a bison. They kind of got turned on them. They use minimal fuel, so when you're talking about this versus a truck, you know, you can minimize your fuel, and you also can get in some terrain where you cannot get with some other vehicles. We have a lot of folks, you know, we'll talk a little bit about your terrain there in Alabama, but if you go especially into the western parts of Nebraska, we have some pretty rugged terrain there as well. And you can, you know, if you've got cattle down in some of these canyons, you know, you may be able to get this machine down there where you couldn't get anything else. And then, of course, the sporting activities, which I have a feeling as we talk today, we're going to hear that a lot of your incidents are occurring during recreation. Families use them for fun. They are used for hunting, which I think Alabama has a pretty robust hunting. You know, you've got a lot of hunting that's going on there. We are going to talk about EMS and fire departments use, military use them, the rescue use them. And they're fairly inexpensive and they're super convenient. You know, you can, Aaron works a lot on feed yards, and some of these feed yards will use these instead of horses, right? So they will, you don't have to feed them in the winter time. So when we talk about a UTV, that's something, you know, we kind of equate, especially when we're talking to kids, we say, oh yeah, you know, this is more like a golf cart type machine. But it has, you know, especially in agriculture and in a lot of other uses, hunting too, they'll be fitted for cargo boxes. And that's to carry your, you know, you can throw a deer up there, whatever you want to throw in the back there. They may have 4, 5, or 6 wheels. They are designed for work. These are not designed for recreation. They may have a variety of fuel sources, anything from diesel to electric or hydrogen fuel cells. They will likely, and this is where Aaron will talk more about this, but you know, they're more likely to have rollover protection and seatbelts, right? Which we all believe that when more people were moving to these UTVs, we're going to see a lot fewer incidents, which is unfortunately not the case. Low pressure tires that are absolutely not designed for pavement, and we try to stress that in our a lot of, especially when we're talking to youngsters. And they're very popular for recreational use, although they are designed. And then the ROVs, or the recreation, and this is maybe what some y'all may be familiar with these. If we go into North Dakota and South Dakota, they have these, you can rent these almost on every corner. They are used for recreation, not hauling or work. They do not have that work box on the back. We have seen that speed is a factor in most of these incidents. And they use them on hard surface roads. And in some states, these can be licensed, including Nebraska. And they allow them if they are modified for the street. And that would include licensing, of course, and insuring them. And then the all-terrain vehicles, which the ATV. These are, and I'm showing my age here, of course, anyone that remembers three-wheelers, it ages us just a little bit, but we had a three-wheeler on our farm, and I cannot tell you how many times that was upset. They were death traps. They were banned in the U.S. for manufacturing and sale, believe it or not, for sale as well in 1988 due to that incredibly high injury rate. And you know, like with these ATVs, we were putting our kids on them. You know, even back then and even now. And they, same factors that impact all vehicle rollovers impact ATVs, you know, slope, speed, centrifugal force, and bumps. and we'll see that in a demonstration here in a sec. And the center of gravity can be affected by the rider. We do a lot of tractor safety training, and we talk to our students about, does it matter where your body is on that tractor as far as whether it's going to flip over or not? And it really doesn't. But on an ATV, we absolutely can affect the center of gravity, and it will change very quickly. In agriculture, especially, and I would say in hunting as well, you're changing that center of gravity by adding, and we have a really nice demonstration of that coming up as well. Once you add
Do you
that
still
weight-
encounter the three-wheelers in use today or not as much?
Not so much. How about you guys? Do you see those used in Alabama? We really see very few of them. And they were such junky pieces of junk, and that's a good thing, right? They fell apart, and so they're no longer in use because they were just junky.
They are making some e-bikes now that circumvent that law, that look like the old three-wheelers, but are e-bikes.
Yeah, so watch out for that. And there was a great article in the New York Times that I can share later about these e-bikes and the dangers of those too. That is not our topic today, but it should be a topic for somebody very soon, and will be a topic, I guarantee you. So these things are you range right from the smaller 70 cc all the way up to 800 cc. There is I believe it's a Polaris. I don't know which model it is, maybe Kawasaki. I don't know. That's now exceeding 75 miles an hour. That is insane. Right, there is no reason that we should be going 75 miles an hour on an ATV. And what I like to stress too is their weight. They absolutely are getting bigger, faster, heavier, and what that all leads to is greater physical damage. And we'll see that, I think, in the statistics as well. So there are recommendations. The manufacturers are likely, and they are very concerned about liability. So every ATV that's manufactured in the U.S. will have a big sticker on it that says if it's over 90 cc's, it has 16. Below 16, it's got a big red slash through it. So that is their attempt at mitigating some liability for all these deaths. So the manufacturers recommend over 16 if it's greater than a 90 cc machine. 70 to 90 would be their 12 to 15-year-old models, or models designed for 12 to 15-year-olds, and then 6 to 12 years, 70 cc's. And it isn't that, and we have seen incidents with these young kids killed on these smaller machines. It's just if you've got a 70 cc machine sitting on your chest versus something that weighs 540 pounds, you probably have a better chance of surviving. And another thing to keep in mind, that manufacturers cannot knowingly sell an ATV greater than 90 cc's to anyone under age 16. So if your kid has saved up all summer long and they walk into the Kawasaki or your power sports dealer and hand him $1,200 for that cool little ATV out there, and he's only 14 years old, that manufacturer or that dealer cannot legally sell that to that child, not his parents. So
What have you, sorry to interrupt. I'm just asking questions from the chat. What have you heard about states enforcing that law about not selling to people younger than 16?
What are we about enforcement?
Yeah.
I would say that it's probably nil to nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think that especially because so many of these power sports are located in some of our smaller cities too. Now, I wouldn't say that's necessarily true in Omaha because I think they may be a little bit more sensitive to regulations. But if you go out to Beatrice, Nebraska, and go to a dealer and this kid, walks in, I would say that my guess is they're going to selling that unit. Do you guys have any experience with that?
So I can actually tell you a story on that. I used to do some mystery shopping, and it was probably about 10 years ago. But one of the mystery shops that I did was actually done by companies that sell the ATVs, and I would have to go in. They gave me a scenario and say that I was buying an ATV for my 11-year-old, and to see what they would suggest, and they would tell me that every one of them passed it. You know, they said, well, this is the only one that is safe for an 11-year-old, and it would be the smaller one. And like I would say, but my son, you know, he's tall, he's like 5'11", and they would say, no, this is the only one that's recommended for 11-year-old. This is the only one we can sell you for 11-year-old. So
I love that.
If you say who you're buying it for in these stores around here, they say this is the only one. So I mean, they do say that in the stores.
I think that really is heartening, and not having that experience. Mine was all just off gut feeling, but that is really wonderful to hear that they are guiding people to the right machines.
Problem is the parents that will buy them not saying that and then let their children. It's the same thing. The parents that buy other things for their children that they shouldn't have at a younger age. And they do the same thing with ATVs. So that's good to hear about the dealers, though.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because that's one step, right?
Yeah.
If the dealers are educating and not letting someone walk away with something that this child absolutely cannot handle. That's great. Yeah, thank you, Monica. That's really nice, Steve. So when I started looking at the laws, and we know that every state is different. I can tell you, at least every state that we've done presentations for, right, has been very different on the laws. And I will tell you what I love about Alabama's laws, you know, that you cannot ride these on the roadways legally. And that is really, that's really wonderful, because we know that 48% of the incidents that we track are on roadways. So almost half of all fatalities occur using these in a way that these were not designed to be used, but may have been very legal. Now, we know that there's no helmet requirement. How about motorcycles in Alabama? Are you required to wear a helmet on motorcycles?
Yes.
Oh, good for you. But because of the fact that you do not require, or that these are not allowed on the roadway, I assume that's why no helmet requirement is in the state law. Minimum age, no minimum age. If you are on private property in Alabama, there's no law that restricts age of a person. You know, the state is turning that responsibility over to the parent or the guardian at that point, right? And there's where we wish that we had this law that prohibited the use of ATVs. They are not designed to be on public roads, on roadways. They are just not designed for that.
But we do have a lot of public dirt roads in our area, and I actually live on a dirt road, and there's lots of ATVs that come up and down my road. So even though they're not allowed, very seldom do the police do anything about it.
Right. So your enforcement sounds like our enforcement here as well, because there are some things that just. Aaron lives out in a kind of a lake type community, and I think you see that as well, don't you?
Yeah, and we did a presentation for that lake community, and they're legal inside the community because the whole community is private property, but on both sides of its county roads. And to get to the gas station, you have to go down the county road, so they do that. And most of the officers and enforcement people just turn their head. And when we've had discussions about that, the enforcement officers, whether it's local, county, or state police, feel like they don't have enough ammunition to pull people over, or if they try, they run. So they don't feel like it's worth their time. So we need to have more discussions, I think, with our enforcement people, that they understand what the rules and laws are and that they can enforce them, and they're given the authority or whatever it may be to enforce them. That seems to be a big hang up in our area anyway, is whether they can enforce stuff and whether they even know what the regulations are and whether they think it's important enough. They feel like maybe they have other things to do. So when I've talked to officers about this, there's just a lot of confusion, and that confusion leads to lack of enforcement.
But from our end, kudos, Alabama.
At least there's a policy.
At least there's a policy. So we, as y'all, someone mentioned or had asked about some of the statistics that you'll see. A lot of these, and this is just such a wonderful source, and we will share this PowerPoint with you. You're welcome to use it any way you like to mock us. Yeah. You wouldn't believe what these people said, but no, you're welcome to use it any way you like, and it has active links in it. So if you want to get to these statistics, and this really is the Consumer Product Safety Commission putting this together is such a great resource, because we can report with authority, right? Here's what they found. There is a lag, and some of this will be reflected in the data you see, but they want to make sure they have it right before they publish. And so we, just as a reminder, OHV is all highway vehicles, as you see. So I took some information there, and we pulled that out for Alabama. Now this is just a 5-month period, January to May, and y'all are up there. You're number 4 for fatalities, with 3 fatalities in the 5 months, and this is I was talking to Aaron about this morning. We like to look at this, or I like to look at this especially because I understand Florida's, I understand Pennsylvania and Texas are great big states. Alabama's a pretty big state, but we like to think about the whys. Y'all don't let people on the roadways, so it's not that 48% we see killed. Maybe some of them are, but you have laws against roadway use. So I would love to have a conversation about why y'all, and then in 23, with 12 months, you're number 5 for ranked. There's a number of them that are up there, but you're ranked up there with California, Florida, Wisconsin, Kentucky, Texas again. Great big, nice big states, and that's part of it, right? You're just a big state. But how about terrain? Can you tell us? How many of these deaths do you think might be related to the terrain? Any thoughts on that? Oh yeah, I saw a beautiful picture as I was scanning your state, some of your state pictures, and it looks like you have some rough terrain, and so maybe some of these may be blamed. In Missouri, with our tractor rollovers, that's something we truly believe is we have. They are either number 1 or number 2 in rollover deaths for tractors. And one of the things is they've got a lot of hills there. It's a lot of ravines, a lot of ways that these tractors can turn over. So my guess is that some of this is related to terrain. And I want to. It's really important that we talk about the kids, because it is tragic, the number of children that are dying on these machines. So if we looked from 2018 to 20, so 3-year span, and we saw a total number of deaths of about 2,448. And now that's all ages deaths. And if we look at the kids that were under 16, 12% of those deaths were under 16 years of age. And that's just not acceptable. And then of this 12% now, if we look at who was under 12 years of age, 44% of those 12. So almost half of those children who died as a result of an ATV incident were under 12 years of age. And something needs to happen here. And I would love to have continue the conversation on that. So what I did was I pulled out some of your deaths, recent deaths. And when I saw, this picture, this was last month. There was a vigil for an 8-year-old who died in an ATV. It was a rollover. Now the picture on the right may have been the one I said I saw that looked so amazing. I don't know if that's where it happened, but may have been. But that picture, that family, wow, that doesn't break your heart. This was in September of 25, 2 adults dead, 7 children injured in a crash. 2 UTVs collided with each other and caused this tragedy.
I think that points out a terminology issue. They were UTVs, they called them ATVs.
They did.
So a lot of times in our reporting and other things we see like that, we try to shy away from the term accident and use the word incident or crash. You don't hear people say an airplane accident.
Yeah.
They say an airplane crash, and they force that into people. But even car crashes, oftentimes you'll hear accident. And those of us as safety professionals, I'm not as passionate as some, but they think the word accident tries to shed the blame or say that it wouldn't have been preventable, where the term crash or incident leads more to a prevention message than just a term accident. Mm-hmm.
And then this was December of last year, so about 12 months ago. Juvenile killed, and another example of a youth that should be here today had they not been put on that machine. So when we talk about fatalities, right, that's tragic deaths. We aren't going to, that's hard to get over. But here's a statistic that everybody should just burn into their minds. In 2023, there were an estimated 100,000 emergency room visits related to ATV injuries. And that is a phenomenal number. And a lot of these folks do not they don't walk away from the hospital. They may be, a lot of these are spinal cord injuries, head and neck injuries, which we'll see here in a minute. But we know that a lot of these are life-altering injuries that these folks are encountering. And especially when you're talking about the head and neck piece of that as well. So when Aaron and I, it's been probably 10 years ago or so, we were working with Extension, and they had gotten a call from not our hospital, but another hospital emergency room, talking about they had to do something. They were having all of these kids coming in to the ER. They just had to do something. So that precipitated us creating an ATV simulator, which we'll show in a minute here. But it really got us motivated when you have an emergency room nurse come in and say, I can't stand this anymore, let's get something done. But they are seeing these, just divide that by 50. That's a huge number.
How often are you seeing, how often are you seeing collisions with other vehicles versus rollovers that are independent from a crash situation?
I think, and we do have that data. I'm not presenting that today, but I do think that a lot of those that we see on the roadway are collisions with other vehicles. Now, when you talk about some of our agricultural incidents, those are a lot of rollovers. Not necessarily, unless it may be contact, but it may be contact with an animal. We'll have bulls that'll come over and just knock you off of your ATV. But when you're talking about, and would you agree with that, Aaron?
Yeah, and I don't know if it's in the data here, but the rollovers are the ones that are those torso. They're the more serious injuries when these heavy machines land on top of people. They create, internal injuries, suffocations, other things like that. Huge trauma scenes with the heavy machines Where the highway crashes, it's more of an injection and flying, and they hit other things, or they get very bruised up or very scraped up. So there are different types of injuries depending, and then the outcomes are a little different, whether they're fatalities or injuries. But a lot of the rollovers end up in fatalities because of the machine landing on top of people.
The crushing.
Yeah.
So what's the difference of the red and the blue on this slide?
Oh, excuse me, those are women and men, and I somehow didn't get that legend. I'm sorry. The red are men, the blue are women. I don't know why I dropped that legend somehow. My apologies. But you know, here I think what this really shows me is it's not discriminating, right? These are affecting every part of the body. Some of them, you know, we tell our students that we can fix your arm and your leg here at our hospital, but we really don't know what to do about your noggin. And if you break that spine, that's going to be something where it's going to be, you know, lifetime injury. But look at that, you still have 20%, you know, torso injuries, 20% leg, you know, 30 arm. So really it is affecting every part of that body because you're not protected.
There's two questions in the chat I just want to ask real quick. How often have you seen situations where the lack of detection of the OHV crash resulted in death?
That's a big one. We see that in agriculture all the time because of lone workers. The same things happen with lone riders. Normally when it's a recreational use, there's more people around. The work use, we oftentimes might see the lone worker stuff more often, but there's definitely an impact, especially like I said, with those crushing injuries. I would say, I'd be willing to say up to 3/4 of those fatalities oftentimes are people by themselves when we look at the data and look through the data. So definitely over half of those are people that were injured that if someone did respond right away. I know we've had some students look at monitors we can put on the ATVs themselves that would detect a crash, kind of like they do in cars. Like think of OnStar in your Chevrolet vehicles that if there's a crash, it contacts somebody. So there are some concepts of that. I think there's even a commercial system out there that you can get and install, but most people don't spend extra for safety features. But it would help prevent some of those fatalities because we know they do occur because people aren't found right away.
I was in a car accident in May and my cell phone auto detected the accident and called 911.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah, I wonder if it would
I would think so.
detect an
ATV. Got a smartwatch on, you know.
Smartwatches do that too, and now cell phones. We used to say, well, there's no coverage where we're going, but now they use satellites, especially for emergency calls. If you have a fairly new cell phone, if there's a detection like that, it will use the satellite connection. As long as it's not buried, it can still get that satellite connection. So we tell that to our ag producers too. If you're working by yourselves, keep your mobile devices with you because you can always, even if you can't reach it, you can talk to it. I'm not going to say my digital assistant's name, but if you say that name, then it'll light up and you can talk to it to help as well. So that's a great point.
You know, and we had a really huge success. An elderly fella fell off of one of our grain bins here, and his smartwatch recognized that he had had a fall and called and probably saved his life by bringing and they were able to ping him, I guess the word, because of that smartwatch. So I think there are maybe we will have, some incidents that will end up in just as injuries versus fatalities because of these wearable devices, which is great.
Great question. Was there another one?
Yeah, another question talking about data collection challenges and where your data comes from, law enforcement, hospitals.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. I love that question. So we have subscribed to a news clip service, which is really wonderful. We get every incident that is recorded, agriculturally agriculturally related in our 7 states comes to us monthly. It is curated by a safety expert. And so they weed out anything that is not agriculture, or, they'll take out things that we would not necessarily be putting into a database for ag injuries or fatalities. And so that's a great way. I'll tell you another one. We just got, within the last 2 years, our hospital is now turning over their trauma data to us. And I had a student work on that, and it is rich because there's a lot of qualitative data in there. You'll have not only the docs, but the EMS may have notes. And we got all those notes. So not only were we able to discern the type of injuries, but also where it happened. And so if you are looking for some rich data, get to your hospitals and start talking to them about sharing de-identified, and make sure you say, you don't want names, you don't want zip codes, but de-identified trauma data is excellent to work with. And I had a student that wrote a really nice short correspondence on, or journal article on that. And it's good data. It's rich data. The news clips can be too, but you've got to remember, you've got folks who are in a hurry writing them, and you may not get the data like you are going to get from a trauma hospital.
And even with that said, we know we don't find out about all the incidents. There's more that are out there that we're not hearing about, or ones that they rolled something over and didn't get seriously injured. So unless they get some medical attention, and even sometimes if it's minor medical attention, it may not get tagged or flagged in a way that we can find the data. So we know there's more than what we know about. We hear about the more severe ones, and even the fatalities and that sort of thing. So trauma registries are good. A lot of the trauma departments, hospitals that do have trauma centers, they're required to do some outreach too. So they typically have people like the one that reached out to us to try to do some programming to prevent those traumas.
So that's another way to approach it, is say, hey, I would love to partner with you to get the word out, but we do need your data.
Small caveat.
Yeah, small caveat. We'd love to have your data. And it is rich, and I think you'll learn a lot from it for your region.
So they reached out to you?
They did.
Oh, that's cool.
Oh, we couldn't believe it. Yeah, we loved it. We loved it because we have, because of HIPAA and some of these other things, we have been shut down, even de-identified. But if you can get someone who is able to share electronic records with you that have been de-identified, that's great. That's really good. Yeah.
Any other good questions?
That was excellent. I love that.
I have a question. There are more in the chat, but I'm going to stick on the hospital thing. I'm going to go out of order. Can you talk a little bit about that, like relationship building that you've attempted to do in other places, not the trauma center that reached out to you to share the data? Can you talk about that a little bit? Like what has worked, what didn't work? Yeah.
So we are very closely associated with our Department of Health and Human Services. Your department, I assume every state's department, are going to have a wealth of data on, especially related to occupation, but also other health effects. And we have had better, our dean is really good now and has a real close relationship. So we can get some data from DHHS. Another great source is Extension. And our Extension does a survey. And Aaron, could you talk a little bit about that?
They do needs assessments and other surveys all the time to see what the people want from Extension. So we get that. And then once we build, like you said, building those connections, building those networks and nurturing those, letting people know who you are and what you do. So showing up to their meetings and engaging with them. I think HHS is the same way. We have a lot of graduates from our college that work at DHHS now. So building those professional networks and continuing to grow, let people know what you do. And that's how I have an Extension appointment. So working with Extension, showing up to their meetings, making a presence there, talking to some people. Everybody has a story they'd like to share, and on these topics as well. So once you build those, so it takes a lot of relationship. Those cold calls, just like anything else, don't seem to work very well. So.
And another thing that I think, and I would investigate this in Alabama with your extension as well. But they do a yearly survey that you can add questions to, and I think that would maybe be a way. We haven't used it as much as we should have, but that would be another way, using extensions. What do they call that? Community survey.
Yeah, some sort of
survey.
community. It might just be community survey.
Yeah.
But yeah. So again, letting those people know who you are. Extension is a very trusted source, especially in rural communities. It's right up there with faith-based communities and other places like that. So finding those networks in your rural communities that have trust with the people of that community helps a lot. And extension is one of those for us. Every state I've been in, Pennsylvania, Indiana, and now Nebraska, it has been that way. So I assume in other states as well.
Yeah, and Aaron will talk a little bit more about maybe some partnerships you can look at in Alabama as well, that may really want to partner with you for various reasons. And he'll talk about that in a minute.
Yeah. Do you have other questions for us from the chat?
Yeah, there are two other questions. So, what have you seen with the ages of workers that are involved in crashes? Are they typically older, or are they more of typical working age?
So that's funny. The way you phrase that is funny, because our typical average age of our farmer is 58 across the U.S. So we're working with a population that is old. I'm just going to say it because I'm old. I can say that. It's just an older population. So we see the range, right? Well, we're going to see incidents with obviously the very young kids who have been put on these machines. But also, we had he was in his 70s or 80s, the guy who Bristow interviewed. So we see the range. I would say, and I think it's true for our tractor overturns as well, that it probably skews older.
So there's different reasons normally too. If we see the younger ones work related, sometimes it's lack of knowledge and skill. And then with the older people, they have knowledge and skill, but they might start losing their physical abilities. I like the meme that says the leading cause of injury to older men is thinking they're younger men. Because we think we can still do things. As I'm approaching those ages, I can say that. But, we're not quite as strong as we used to be. Our eyesight's not as good. We don't have the reaction time that we used to. So I think different reasons, but we see a skew to those sides. Sometimes those middle-age groups, it makes us just a little bit more responsible when we have kids. I've got this great data chart on one of my others that shows like a dip for males in the middle ages, like 30 and 40, because that's when they become slightly more responsible when they have kids. And then I say in their 50s and 60s, that's when their kids are teenagers and they do stupid stuff with their kids and become injured again. So we kind of see it spread a little bit, but definitely heavier on the older side than on the younger side.
Good question.
And the other question says, are you seeing people survive the OHV crash and then succumb to their injuries while being treated in the hospital?
I think we do see that some. I know I can think of a few incidents where you saw that, especially when it's the torso, the trunk and chest injuries, those type of injuries, and even the head injuries, where the swelling and other systems like that, it takes a while for that to be impacted. So we do see some of that where they pass away later on. It's not an immediate acute effect.
And all of our trauma data have been transported.
Yeah.
So they arrived alive and then they died.
Yeah.
So that would be our trauma data for fatalities would be reflective of the answer to that question. Yeah. And so there are a number that do. And Aaron's got a great demonstration here about why the injuries are different between an ATV and a UTV. And UTVs, just because of the way our heads are hitting, if we aren't seat belted in, it's a lot of head and neck injuries. So yeah. Okay, I'm gonna move on.
Yeah.
We've got behaviors. What kind of behaviors are associated with fatalities specifically? And this is a huge statistic. 92% involve one or more of these unsafe behaviors. And it's not a huge list, but it's an important list. Not wearing any PPE, and I cannot stress the need for helmets enough. Riding on those paved surfaces, which there again, hopefully Alabama isn't seeing as many of those. Extra passengers. We know that 25% of those killed were that extra passenger. They have no control. Riding an ATV larger than recommended, which is our kids. Speeding, and then of course we cannot seem to get away from the use of drugs and alcohol. People just think they can get on these things and while they're altered and use them. And then we know that about 90% of ATV deaths and injuries to youth under 16 were on adult-sized machines. That's huge. These were not machines that they should have. Size matters, right? We need to understand how our youth fit, and our even smaller women. Some of these machines are just too big for these smaller women. And Aaron will discuss that with his demonstration about how we can determine what size of machine, for a specific person. No passengers, absolutely has to be a rule. We saw that 25% of those folks that died were those passengers. We have to talk about PPE. It's essential. Knowing the environment, terrain, and I especially think in Alabama, this may be a huge concern. Understanding pre-ride inspections. How many of those people on these machines know how those machines work, how they are, what tire pressure should be, have they checked the oil, things like that are essential to safety. And then training and education for the parents and youth riders. We do not train. We do a terrible job training. I have people call almost weekly asking me where they can get ATV training, and I can't tell them. Here in Nebraska, we used to have trainers. We no longer have trainers in Nebraska. We have to send them to Oklahoma. Is that where we're sending them out? And that's too bad. We need more of that. And someone could make some money, by the way. Okay, real quickly, I want to talk about policy. Y'all may be very familiar with this, but last year, SB 64 was introduced into your legislative agenda. Motor vehicles, off-road vehicles used on public roads authorized under certain conditions. You can read it. I put the reference there. And here's the good news. It was introduced, but it was dead. Now, I don't believe that it was not reintroduced in 25, but you may see this again. But I want to tell you, kudos, Alabama legislators, for keeping those things off the road. And here, as an example, is a published study from a state that did not and passed, they didn't, it wasn't dead upon arrival. They passed that, and they here a few years later, so that was passed in 2020. A few years later, they did an analysis of injuries as a result, and what they found was there was a significant increase in injuries and fatalities following the passage of that legislation, allowing ATVs and UTVs. It was almost 30% increase by that simple change in law, letting these things on the roadway. So take this, if that comes back up in Alabama, take this published paper and show them the data that this is not something you want in your state. You do not want 20% to 30% more people dying. All right, I'm going to turn the controls over to Aaron.
All right. Talk about some fun stuff. I love my social media, so I don't think this will start right away. Okay, I'll click on it. So watch this person on the ATV. We'll have lots of stuff to talk about. Think about what they did right, what they did wrong. One of the things we talk about with ATV safety is active riding, meaning that person that's on it needs to move their weight around. Ellen hinted to that early on. See what this person did right or wrong. We might even play it a few times for you to pick all that up. Did that come through okay? You guys could see that? All right. Let's see if it'll play one more time. So they had a helmet on, check, right? They didn't have long pants on. Their active riding wasn't very good. They were leaning forward, and maybe they should have been leaning back. I'm not sure if they even should have been jumping, but we know people do fun things. So one more time, we'll check that out, and we'll talk about it. All right. So yeah, lots of things. It's amazing the stuff you can find on social media to use for educational efforts and what people actually do and what they record each other doing. Parents recording kids doing foolish things. Parents even encouraging kids to do foolish things and recording it. America's Funniest Videos just doesn't have the same impact anymore. I assume this person survived. I didn't hear the rest of the story. They did have their helmet on. They definitely flew off of it. So yeah, lots of points which we'll talk about. It did not roll over, but it did crush them or run over them a little bit anyway. Go to the next slide. So like I mentioned, great slide of one of our ranchers out here with their personal protective equipment on. They've got eye protection. They've got their helmet on, gloves. I don't know how much they had to pay him to put all this stuff on because I don't know if they would have done that on their own. Hopefully they would, but long pants and boots, and we'll talk a little bit more about different types of personal protective equipment. But anytime we talk to people, helmets, it's kind of like seatbelts in cars. Helmets are probably one of the most important things we can have when we talk about personal protective equipment. Lots of different studies out there looking at helmeted riders and the outcomes and injuries that occur because of having helmets on, knowing they're significant. I oftentimes will debate with some of my colleagues about the need for a DOT-approved helmet. That's what we suggest, Department of Transportation approved helmets on ATVs. I oftentimes will tell people any helmet is better than no helmet. Multi-sport helmets, other helmets. If we could get people to wear PPE, even if it's not the best PPE, it's a step in the right direction. Fortunately, with the younger kids, it's kind of cool to wear all the motocross gear. But then once they reach about 15 or 16, it's not cool anymore. And then they don't want to wear it. So lots of different things we can and angles we can take to get people to wear those. Policies are one things we can do, but we mentioned the challenges with enforcement and policies and other things like that. But we know helmets protect people. Helmets save lives. We're very disappointed when we see states or regions get rid of helmet policies because they do help encourage people to use it. So lots of data out there to show that they work. I'm going to give you a warning. The next slide has a few interesting gory pictures on them.
If you have like me, if you don't want to see something gross, look away.
Some pretty big brush burns and bruises. So we'll click to that. So these are just some other documented injuries of why we tell people we need to wear gloves and pants and boots to protect a lot of these type of injuries that would not have occurred if they would have had, or they would have been less severe if we'd have had long sleeves and durable long sleeves, riding gear, even Carhartt clothing in our workers, heavy canvas stuff can work. I don't know how many times when I talk to youth, we talk about getting burned, and all of them seem to have been burned by mufflers and other things sitting on the back of an ATV. So just being aware of having the right clothing on. Helmets are the best, but then pants, long sleeves, other things like that. Eye protection of some sort, depending on how fast you're going and what tasks you're doing. Again, when we talk about injury prevention, we have what we call the hierarchy of controls. So we can have people wear PPE, which is the least effective way to protect people. The most effective way is to eliminate the hazard. So we're going to start at that end of the pyramid and come up with some other things. There's engineering things we can do. There's administrative controls we can do. We can substitute a more harmful thing for a less harmful thing. We do that with chemicals all the time. Let's use a less harmful chemical when we're spraying it. Then there's less opportunity for people to get injured. So we can follow those same things when we talk about ATVs. So eliminating the hazard to begin with, just don't ride ATVs, right? That would be one. If that's not acceptable, eliminate the hazard of having a big ATV. So making sure it's the right size and the right fit. If you do want your children to do that, making sure they have the right tools and equipment. Substitution is another one of those which kind of fits in that category. So substituting a hazardous thing for a less hazardous thing. We know that with most safety and prevention behaviors we want to change, the barriers are time and money. So it takes too much time to get the right size one. It takes too much time to go get the helmet out of the house. So leave the helmet by the ATV. Cost, to get another smaller ATV just for my kids to have recreation with doesn't make sense when I already have one that I do work and snow plowing and stuff with. I'll just let them use that one. So the substitution of getting them the smaller one, getting them the right safety equipment, getting them helmets that fit, those type of things to help minimize those hazards. Engineering controls, and in my hands-on demonstration, I'll show you this, but this bar on the back of an ATV, it's called a quad bar because it comes from Australia, and they call four-wheelers quads there, quad bikes. So it's called a quad bar. But it's used in many different places. The advocates for it in Australia actually got policy passed that any work-related ATV has to have these. The major manufacturers were not happy about that and even pulled out of the market for a while. But now they're back in there because people have accepted them and started using them for work purposes anyway. We can chat more about that. But that would be an engineering control. How can we make something safer? Rather than having somebody, like if we're working with dusty conditions, having better ventilation makes more sense than making people wear masks. So it's kind of like that type of trade-off when we talk about engineering controls. Administrative controls, this is where supervision, policies, and regulations. So that it can be, federal, state, local. It can even be company or family policies, as I'll call it in some situations, of what we can do, what you're allowed to do, what you're not allowed to do. A lot of the time, we run into trouble with administrative controls because of lack of enforcement. We can make up good policies. We can have people come up with good ideas of how we could avoid things. But until we get buy-in from everybody, either it's the supervisor, it's the operator, that sort of thing. We oftentimes will recommend adult supervision. But like I said before, sometimes the adults just film people doing silly things. So not all supervision is good supervision. So we want good supervision when we say we want people to be supervised. There's other, points we can talk about when we talk about it. I know insurance companies and policies, we see so much confusion, I guess I'd say, with what's covered, what's not covered. So making sure people are aware, maybe even have some educational efforts. What is covered under your insurance if someone's injured? We've seen a lot of situations where someone gets injured and then maybe somebody loses their farm or loses their home because of the lack of the right insurance coverage. And I have so many conversations about, well, they're my friends, they're not going to sue me, but most likely they're not going to sue you, but their health insurance company will sue you to pay for the medical expenses. So even if you have a good relationship with somebody, sometimes that insurance coverage is really important because somebody has to pay the medical bills and the healthcare companies are going to try to get that money from someone else rather than out of their pocket. So lots of talking points there when it comes to insurance coverage. Lots of great PPE out there, our personal protective equipment. Lots of great safety features out there, making people aware of those. Like I said, little people like this oftentimes are very excited to wear the safety equipment to look like older people. So us older people need to model good behaviors. Our supervisors need to model good behaviors, the parents and other people, so that trickles down. Oftentimes in ag safety, we use the youth to train the parents. We'll teach the youth stuff and then we'll hear their parents complaining and saying, hey, my kid's nagging me about this unsafe thing I'm doing. Why'd you tell him that? But so sometimes going upward that way helps as well, but getting everybody on board and using those lighter weight materials, more comfortable equipment, the biggest thing when we talk about PPE and our personal protective equipment is finding stuff that people are interested in wearing. I know I have a set of earbuds I wear all the time. They protect my hearing, but they also, I can listen to my radio, take phone calls and podcasts, that sort of thing. But they protect my hearing. So they're multiple use, and it encourages people to use it if it fits well and it does maybe something they wanted to do, in addition to things they should have. So what we're here for is we do lots of education, right? Ellen mentioned some of the outreach and other things we do, and we think, we know education isn't 100% effective. If we can get those engineering controls, that's great. But the more fun we can make education and the more word we get out and the more people we educate, I don't know how many times when we talk about different safety topics, people say, well, I just didn't realize that, or I didn't know that. Some people know better and don't do the right thing, but a lot of people maybe just don't know what the right thing is. So making sure we continue with those educational efforts. We did develop this ATV simulator, so we got a donated ATV, mounted it onto a small aluminum trailer, and we can put people on it and tip it in different directions. This was emphasizing that active riding. So we'll talk about, hey, look, why does the ATV have this big seat on it? And occasionally we get somebody say, for someone else to sit on. So it was a setup. But no, it's really because that person needs to move around because of the how their body weight influences this. And you can almost see this is a grown adult here, but he even almost has trouble moving. He's a shorter guy that we worked with, showing that you need to be moving around, leaning uphill and moving around when we're doing that. Once we get to the UTVs, it's less of an issue, but definitely on the ATVs, it can be an issue. Unless you're a small person, a smaller person on this, a youth on this, your body weight's not going to be able to have that big of an influence. So that's why it's important to match the machine size to the operator size. So body position. This is another example of a helmet that we try to promote that's a little more acceptable to our farmers and ranchers. It's not the motocross style, but still DOT approved and provides that head protection that we need when we do it. I bought my dad one of these thinking he'd wear it because it's camouflage and he goes hunting. I still don't think he wore it. I tried. So now I have a short video I'm going to try to play here. And Haley, let me know if it doesn't come out right. Switch to this. That we created in partnership with some others. Seems to do a good job of covering some of those key components that we talked about.
Did you know that half of all work-related deaths on ATVs involve agriculture? Studies have demonstrated that most of the deaths are caused by rolling the ATVs. This trend is observed in many countries. Imagine what it would feel like to have up to 700 pounds on top of your body. Most rollover incidents cause several injuries to the head and chest. In the last 20 years, injuries have become even more severe due to larger ATVs. There are several hazards experienced while operating an ATV. Unstable, sloped terrain, and collisions are just a few of the hazards related to agriculture. Prevention strategies are important. Start by wearing colorful, reflective clothing and use proper protective equipment like helmets, non-skid shoes, and gloves. Resist the urge to work with multiple riders, and always remember to tell your family and coworkers where you're going. The most effective way to prevent ATV deaths is with proper equipment. You may be able to save a life by considering installation of crush protection devices and looking for high stability products. Be sure to choose the appropriate vehicle for the size of the operator. A crush protection device is designed to protect the operator if the vehicle rolls over. It's designed to stop a continuous roll and divert the machine away from the rider. Basic maintenance also helps. Recommended and equal tire pressure reduces the risk of rolling. Check wheel lug nuts. Also, make sure that other systems like the brakes are working.
All right. So that does a pretty good job of summarizing what some of those are. We have links to that you guys are welcome to use that video. And even if we want to add or delete stuff from it, we could probably work on helping with that if you want to co-brand it or use it for some other things. We mentioned all our different ag centers that we have across the country. I believe this one came out of the Colorado Ag Center, but some great techniques about riding and riding safety. So we have a YouTube channel that has some of that stuff. The video I just showed was on that YouTube channel as well, but there's a whole series of ATV riding videos on there that talk about each one of those key concepts in that previous video. One of the groups that we wanted to mention and that I had some people reach out to me this summer was our EMS and fire companies that are now using UTVs as rescue vehicles. Oftentimes they'll add extra stuff to them, like this one you can see that has toolboxes, hoses, water tanks, lots of other things like that. You can see the chainsaw sticking on the side there. But they don't often modify the suspension. So they're raising that center of gravity a lot higher and not doing that. Many of them haven't had much training on how to operate these. We had one in northern Nebraska this summer where we had a wildfire. And the only way they could get to the wildfire was with UTVs. Their fire trucks couldn't make it out there. But then they started talking about going through fields that had washouts in them or ravines or other things like that, not being aware of all the hazards. So don't forget your EMS and your fire and rescue people when it comes to doing training and outreach. I actually had the opportunity to talk in Nebraska. We have what are called weed control superintendents. So every county has a person that's in charge of identifying and managing the weeds, especially noxious weeds. So I went and talked to that group of people about ATV and UTV safety. I found a great slide set from the U.S. Forest Service for use like that. That we could share as well. That had a lot of good things. So think about other audiences as well. These injuries or that there may not be documented. They do a lot of self-doctoring. So if they get injured doing this stuff, they may not be as reported of the injuries. But making sure we think about all those audiences, not just the general consumers, but also fire and EMS is one that we want to point out. And if we get the right fire and EMS person excited about it, they'll be advocates as well. And they're one of those respected community members. So if fire and EMS start talking about ATV and UTV safety, other people will listen.
Quick question from the chat. How do you envision the videos shown on the Safer ATV riding on farms and ranches to be used, or how have you been using them?
Yeah, so we advertise them through social media. That's a great way to get those out and to use those. We use them in worker training. So if we have a cattle feed yard or a ranch that says, hey, we're seeing a lot of these type of injuries, do you have any materials? That the concepts that are taught there would probably work for hunting and fishing as well, even though it doesn't say that.
It's not, it's really not. Once you get into them, it's basic riding rather than anything too agricultural related. I think to get it on our YouTube, it had to be somewhat ag related, but it could be used for any audience actually. And they are really good. They're really good.
Very well done.
Really.
They could be used as in a proctored thing like this, or you could potentially have people look at them on their own. But I think social media, they're short video clips, so they're good for social media where sometimes we lose attention on other things. So advertising those at the beginning of hunting season, maybe the beginning of a season, the springtime when people are going to be out more on ATVs. We've seen them used in many different ways and advertised them in many ways. Sometimes when we have a project called Telling the Story, where we'll find an incident and then talk about the incident, maybe even talk to the people involved, and then have a prevention message at the end of it. So if there were an incident that they were relevant to, they could be used as a follow-up to that news report, sharing them with TV and radio stations. I know like different things like that from time to time when there is a relevant incident or a relevant news media that's going on at the time. So we've seen them used in many ways.
Yeah, they could use them with B-roll too.
Yeah, great B-roll for the TV stations. And all that stuff's free. We have it out there. put a plug in for our Flickr site too. We have a Flickr picture site that has some ATV and UTV stuff on it as well. That's in there. Does that get the question?
Yeah, thank you so much. And just quickly, I just want to do a time check. It is 2:15 now, so yeah,
When are we
just to
supposed to
throw that
wrap
out
up?
there.
15 minutes.
15 minutes. All
Thank
right.
you. We're having great
We're almost
conversation,
done with
so
this.
Yes, we're almost out of slides, and then we'll do a quick hands-on thing. Training courses, ATV training courses. There's a couple of those out there. A lot of them have got shifted to online stuff now. Most of them are recreationally related, not work related, which fits many different audiences. But if you go to the ATV rider course, there's the Specialty Vehicles Institute that provides a lot of these sources. They do have a list of hands-on courses, but there's not many of those being offered. They do have the online course that you can guide people towards. And I think this came in response. The manufacturers and the salespeople are supposed to provide training when they sell ATVs, and they can point people towards this instead of providing it on their own. Motorsports dealers are great places. They want people to continue to purchase their products, so they don't want people to be injured. So most dealerships will have some people that are interested in safety that can teach safety courses. So, excuse me, reach out and ask. We have a bunch of resources. We're some print resources on our website. So CS Cash and ATV UTV resources. Again, we'll share these links, but there's some UTV specific ones and some ATV specific ones, some handouts and flyers. We can send hard copies. We can rebrand with others. And we're willing to work with everybody. The more the merrier. Other resource pages, which I won't go through all these, but they'll be in the set that you get sent to them. Our YouTube channels on there, our photo sharing sites on there as well as many of our other resources. And then the Consumer Product Safety Commission actually has a link with some state-specific information on it as well. So now I'm going to show some hands-on stuff. I'm going to stop sharing so you can see us in our camera here. And then if you're looking at us in the Brady Bunch view, you can go up to your top right corner, I think, or hit the 3 dots and change it so you can see us. There we go. We got spotlighted. So we'll move our keyboards out of the way. And just give you a few ideas of some demonstrations that we've come up with over time that will help you show some of this stuff and demonstrate the stuff. Like we mentioned, a lot of the stuff we do is work related. So making sure that, these same concepts apply. The first one I have is just a tilt table with an angle gauge that we came up with. Just a small sheet of wood or plywood, something like that. We do have the plans and some of the links to Amazon where you can buy some of these products. So making sure you can find those or reach out if you want to create any of these displays. Great to give out to ag teachers or to use at fairs and events. People seem to like hands-on displays now. So this one, what we're showing is if we add extra weight, it changes the stability. We have 2 hay bales that are bungeed on there. And normally I have one of the kids look at the angle. So we'll tip it up until we get it to tip over, capture what that angle is. If we put it back on there and take these hay bales off of it, and they're just craft hay bales that we found, and they're not real heavy, but just the amount of taking those off and then tipping it up again, we normally get 5 or 10 more degrees on the angle. So just that's enough to show, and that extra weight could be hay bales. It could be an extra rider on there that raises that weight. It could be a spray tank. It could be other things. We have producers that carry calves or other animals on there. So anything that adds extra weight is going to make that less stable. So that's a great demonstration to use for that. We also have the PPE with the helmets and other things. We use this demonstration as well. It's hard to find an ATV with a lot of power, but sometimes we can locate that. I didn't charge it up for today, so I'll show it by hand. This one doesn't have the hitch on it, but this one does. And it also has the crush protection device, which we'll talk about in a minute. But oftentimes people will hitch incorrectly. So when they're trying to pull something, and it could be pulling a load, pulling a log. We see people pulling wood and other things with that. That if we hitch at the drawbar and it starts going forward and the wheels turn, the worst that happens is it kind of spins out and the tires spin. But oftentimes we see this in tractors too. People will hitch up high on it, like up on the rack. And when we start pulling that way, what happens is that tips the vehicle up. It ends up tipping over backwards. And that's where the crush protection device comes in. So hitching, I ask him a trick question, on these more sport model ones. I say, well, if there's no drawbar on it, where do we hitch to? And the correct answer is we don't. But they say, well, you hook it here or you wrap it around the axle. They all have answers for that. Again, but making sure that we're using the right tool for the right job. So I mentioned the crush protection device, and we saw it in a few of the vehicles. The quad bar is one of them. There's other companies that make them. What it does is when this vehicle tips over backwards, it hits that bar and tips to the side. A lot of our crushing injuries, when they start tipping backwards, people will just suck it into them and then it lands on top of them. And that's where we get those torso and crushing injuries. So we have that. And when it tips to the side, it hits that and it kind of picks it up a little bit and keeps that safety zone below it. It either stops it at that angle and keeps it from going. If it does continue to roll over, it picks the back of the machine up a little bit to keep it from crushing the person that's underneath it. So we said a lot of those fatalities we see are those crushing injuries that happen when people get caught underneath these heavy machines. So we talk about using that. It was interesting, and maybe this applies to Alabama. I was at the National FFA convention talking about these things, and someone said, well, I think they were from maybe Tennessee. They said, I put it on the front of it. Like, huh. They said, yeah, we put antennas there to break the cobwebs as we drive through the trees. And I'm thinking, man, you guys have big spiders, and I don't want to come visit if you have that. But so anyhow, the crush protection devices work well for that. Ellen mentioned with the side-by-sides, the protection. Most people think because there's a roll cage and seat belts that we don't need to wear a helmet, but we still see a lot of head injuries, and the roll bar is close enough that we can hit our heads on that. This demonstration we came up with is just for seat belts and non-seat belts. I've got two guys working in there or riding in there. One has a Velcro seat belt on, one of them doesn't. So if we roll the machine over, he fell out. You can't really see that. We'll turn it this way and he falls out. But it shows the importance of wearing a seatbelt to keep you inside the safety zone when it does roll over. So we've got these for tractors and other things. And again, we can share some plans of those demonstrations as well. Sometimes it's just the talking points in the hands-on demonstrations to get to people to come to our tables and things. And then we can engage with them in conversations a little more. So we have that. And then again, talking about the side-by-sides and just the need to wear helmets when we're in front of those or when we're using those, even though they have the rollover bars. We'll oftentimes not see people wearing seatbelts, which we know is an issue with cars as well. But when they don't wear a seatbelt, oftentimes they'll fall out and these things will crush on top of them. Sometimes the roll bar will trap them or they'll get trapped by the machine. Making sure they wear their seatbelts, have their helmets on, even if it has a roll bar on top of it. And then we saw the one about 7 people injured by 2 UTVs crash. There weren't 7 seats there. So we had people riding in the back of those, which we frown upon as well. So making sure we only have enough riders or as many riders as there are seats and some of those talking points. We have some handouts on our website to go along with all this stuff that we can talk about and emphasize some of that. So I think I hit most of the talking points. Is there something else? I think we have about 5 minutes left and love to take any questions.
And I will tell you, we take these, they'll be at farm shows, wherever. And if you think it's only the kids that want these things to run these things, and we have a ramp that you can try to get it up and, it'll go up backwards if you don't take it at the right angle. It's the adults love it too, especially the men.
Yes. Yeah.
We can draw them in, and while they're playing with these machines, we can get some really good conversations going. And so it's been really successful having these hands-on toys that that, and just simply that rollover piece too, has been very effective, talking about seatbelting and the importance of seatbelting.
Yeah, for sure. Or not putting, even guys in the back.
Oh, yeah, the
Yeah.
kids will say, oh, let's put them in the back and see
what happens when we roll it over. Yeah. So just things like that.
Yeah. So it's a great demonstration that doesn't cost much to do.
This is Nick from North Country Council. I'm in New Hampshire. So and I actually was thinking of this just throughout this whole session, is that so New Hampshire does not have a adult seatbelt law or a helmet law for motorcycles. And so it is really difficult. Even we required for everyone under 18, but it's so difficult to get people to understand. Like even this demonstration is like, it's the videos you see. It's really hard to get people to, in cars or OHRVs, ATVs, it's really hard to get people to understand that safety piece. And I was thinking about this, is that about in the past 10 years, our region, ATV, OHR use has exploded. It's a big part of our economy now, since like our paper mills closed and everything.
Right.
And so we've got thousands of people coming up in the summers. We've got people with trailers, dealers, and I think it's really difficult for people to think about, restricting the use or constricting with like regulations, because has been a lifeline. And I know this isn't really a question, but it's kind of just like what I've seen. And no, I think the safety piece, because even I don't really know the stats in our state, but then I just looked up ATV crashes, and I was like, oh, from September, from October, from August, from the summertime is, oh yeah, no, they're there. They are constant.
And I appreciate that, Nicholas, very much. Your thoughts, because like we said, every state's very distinct. I think when we get up to the Dakotas, a lot of their economy is hunting, fishing, summer activities on these ATVs. I'm not kidding you. When you pull into town, one of the first things in these little towns is an ATV rental place.
Yeah.
But that also gives us an opportunity to do some outreach with them and say, hey, what do you recommend? Are you renting helmets with these? Are you, and I'm thinking, surprisingly, one of those states does have a helmet law. They aren't, you think of them as being kind of Wild West, right? But one of them does. And so I think they are required to provide helmets with their equipment. But I think it gives us an opportunity. And I appreciate that very much. It's a lifeline to your communities having something like that. But it can also be so incredibly dangerous. And your example. So maybe engaging these folks who are renting this equipment might be a really good idea too.
Yeah, it's
policy is the last resort, I think.
It is, but I will tell you, having worked in public health, it is the most effective.
Yeah,
if it's enforced.
And that's
but think about seatbelts.
Yeah. Well, our state motto is live free or die. So it is very difficult to get
live
people
free and die. No.
That is what I talk to a lot of people about, is that changed motto. Because, while people take their individualism, and liberty very seriously, but it's, looking at the statistics is like, we got to do better. We're a smaller state, but the numbers are still high. I mean, just like everywhere else. So,